Hello everyone and welcome to the Cooking Club. My name is Teresa and I will be joined by Sonia, Aditi, and Kushi. We are all volunteers for Dr. Kurnu's clinic and we will be informing you today on intermittent fasting. So as I said before, we will be discussing intermittent fasting. Whether you have heard of this diet, use this diet, or even if you have no idea what it is, we hope that you can learn something new today that you can use at home. So, what is intermittent fasting? Intermittent fasting is currently a popular health and fitness practice, and it is a lifestyle change where you switch between periods of eating and fasting during the day. So here we have an example of a schedule that someone who is intermittent fasting might use. So this is called the 16-8 method. So as you can see, this person will fast until 12 p.m. when they'll have their first meal, and they'll stop eating by 8 p.m. So there's only an 8-hour window where they're actually eating, and the rest of the 24 hours of the day are spent fasting. Because we already fast while we are asleep, intermittent fasting would just be extending that fast a little longer by skipping breakfast and eating lunch only at noon, and eating your last meal by 8 p.m. So, like you can tell, we'll be fasting for 16 whole hours and eating for a total of 8 hours per day. So, for some of the rules of intermittent fasting, no food is allowed during the fasting period, which I said could be 16 hours, according to the 16-8 method. But during this time, you can drink water, coffee, tea, and other non-caloric beverages. As long as the coffee is black and the tea is black, with no sugar and no milk, then that should be fine. So people often report feeling better and actually having more energy while fasting. Intermittent fasting is a pretty easy diet, and for most people, once it becomes a routine, hunger cravings are not an issue at all. So why has intermittent fasting become so popular in the last couple of years? It's become popular because of authors like Dr. Jason Fung, who wrote The Obesity Code, as well as there are many other books on the market as well talking about intermittent fasting. And these books are good to read to get more information on intermittent fasting after this presentation. But one thing that is important to remember is that it's not enough to just fast, but it's also necessary to eat more fruits and vegetables, fiber, and healthy proteins while you're in that eating period of the day, and to avoid sugar, refined grains, processed foods, and most importantly, to stop snacking. So now for some more of the scientific perspective on intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting is still a new area of research because it's a fairly new dieting trend. And a lot of studies have been done on animal populations regarding intermittent fasting, but not that many on humans. One study in the Journal of Applied Physiology on animal populations found that intermittent fasting helped with insulin resistance, which is what people with type 2 diabetes struggle with because your body can't use your insulin effectively. Intermittent fasting helps the body use blood glucose and insulin more effectively, decreasing your blood sugar levels and decreasing the risk of diabetes. So another reason why intermittent fasting is good for overall health is because it helps to decrease your risk of cardiovascular disease. So it's more effective to combine intermittent fasting with calorie restriction. This means that during the, for example, 8-hour period where you're eating, you would also be calorie restricting. One study on obese women revealed that intermittent fasting combined with a calorie-restricted diet over 8 weeks decreased low-density lipoproteins, which are the bad cholesterols, by 20%, and it decreased triglyceride levels by 17%. So this can be seen in the image too. This is the example of the study that was used.
So now that you know a little bit about what intermittent fasting is and sort of how it began and how it is becoming more known, you might be wondering at this point, what are some of the advantages as well as some of the disadvantages of going on this type of diet? So for that, we will spend the next couple of slides exploring those pros and those cons. So the first pro that you'll sort of hear about when it comes to intermittent fasting is the possible promotion of weight loss. So that's usually one of the main reasons why intermittent fasting is recommended and one of the major benefits of it. So when we look into the literature to see how intermittent fasting affected other individuals, there's a lot of literature supporting this advantage. So for example, there's one study that was done in Chicago in 2018 with about 23 individuals. And so for the first 2 weeks, these individuals were just measured at baseline. So it was sort of, they weren't on intermittent fasting, they were just following their usual diets. And after those first 2 weeks, intermittent fasting was introduced for the remaining 10 weeks to make a total of 12 weeks. And so when the researchers were comparing the body weight as well as the BMI of these individuals from the first 2 weeks compared to the remaining 10 weeks of the intervention, they found that a lot of these participants, the majority of them, did have a decrease in body weight as well as BMI. So this provides solid evidence for the possible benefit of weight loss. So the second main benefit of intermittent fasting that is usually discussed is the impact that it has on other disease metabolic risk factors. So for example, a lot of other studies, researchers are reporting that intermittent fasting is actually causing blood pressure to be decreased and insulin sensitivity to be increased. And so essentially, insulin sensitivity refers to how sensitive your body cells are in response to insulin. And insulin is a hormone in your body that is responsible for helping out in sugar regulation. And so having a higher insulin sensitivity essentially allows your body to use more of the glucose or the sugar effectively and therefore reduce that blood sugar that's in your body. So one of the drawbacks that's been highlighted for intermittent fasting and some of the challenges that you might encounter is that it's it can be potentially hard to maintain, especially the switch between just eating sort of whenever you desire and switching it to only having certain time periods in which you are actually allowed to eat and having others where you are fasting. So this has kind of been highlighted in a lot of clinical trials that have been occurring where researchers are finding that they're struggling with adherence and essentially individuals are dropping out very fast, especially those that are assigned to the fasting regimen. So, for example, one study that was done in Harvard in 2017 saw a dropout rate of about 38%. So it is definitely challenging, and that's something to keep in mind when you are making the switch and if you do decide to try it. So another drawback that is highlighted here by Dr. Frank who is the chair of the Department of Nutrition at the Harvard School of Public Health. Essentially, Dr. Hu is saying here that it's very in human nature for us individuals to use food as a reward. So if you think about it after a long day at work or just after having busy times, we usually use food as a reward that we indulge in and that we enjoy. And so to have these fasting periods where you're unable to use food as a reward during those times can be very discouraging and very demotivating for some people. Additionally, Dr. Shu here is highlighting how there is a strong push in our bodies to overeat after those fasting periods are over. So if you think about it naturally, your appetite hormones and your hunger center in your brain are kind of going to go into this overdrive when you are in the fasting period. And so after you're finished, you might have a tendency to overeat during the limited amount of time that you are able to. So again, just summarizing some of the points that were brought up by Dr. Hu in the quote earlier on, overeating and eating unhealthy foods can occur during the 8-hour eating window because your body is going into that bit of an overdrive during the fasting period. And again, because food is often thought of as a reward for a lot of individuals, we would urge you to think about what else can you substitute food with. So what else can be a reward for you in place of food when you are unable to maybe eat during those fasting periods. And in those kind of ways, you'll be able to sort of tackle the challenges that come with intermittent fasting when it comes to overeating as well as your reward system.
Let's take a look at some tips and tricks that you can follow to stick to your intermittent fasting diet. Intermittent fasting offers plenty of flexibility. You can fast for as long or as short as you like, depending on your needs and abilities. Generally, shorter fasts are done more frequently. Shorter fasts are characterized as less than 24 hours, whereas longer fasts last more than 24 hours. It's also a good idea to give yourself 1 month to see if intermittent fasting, such as the 16 to 8 regimen, is a good fit for you. The 16 to 8 fasting regimen involves eating all your meals within an 8-hour time period and fasting for the remaining 16 hours. Another tip to remember is to break a fast gently, which simply put means don't binge after fasting. The longer the fast, the more gentle you might have to be. Eating too large a meal after fasting can give you a stomach ache. An important thing to realize is that hunger usually passes like a wave. Many people worry that hunger during intermittent fasting will continue to build until it's intolerable, but this doesn't normally happen. Instead, hunger comes in a wave. If you simply ignore it and drink a cup of tea or coffee or even water, it will often pass. Lastly, another good tip to follow is follow a low-carb diet between fasting periods because this reduces hunger and makes intermittent fasting easier.
When on an intermittent diet, you should try to eat foods that are high in fiber, such as nuts, fruits, and vegetables. You should also try to pack your diet with foods that are high in protein, such as tofu or fish or beans, and also look for healthy sources of starch, such as sweet potatoes, pumpkin, and squash to add to your meals in order to keep you fuller longer. Try to avoid eating foods that are high in sugars and high in calories. Since intermittent fasting only involves eating during a particular period of time, it's important to compose your meals in a way that's beneficial for you. Try to choose high fiber foods as well as vegetables that have starches to help sustain you for longer. This can mean adding sweet potatoes, pumpkin, or various kinds of squash to your vegetable portions during the day. Try to include foods that are high in protein. This can include beans, tofu, fish, or lean meats. Another tip is to try and stick to plant-based meals as these tend to be lower in calories. We have a sample meal plan here for you that's based on the 16-8 intermittent fasting pattern. In this pattern, you would stop eating at 8 p.m. at night and only resume eating at 12 p.m. the next day. So before 12 p.m., you're not to consume any food. It is encouraged that you consume different fluids, so drinking water, and if you choose to drink coffee or tea, taking it black with no added cream or milk or sugar. At 12 p.m. would be the standard lunch time. Lunch should consist of fiber-rich foods with proteins, so a great example is having salad with a lean meat or a plant-based protein. Afternoon snacks should consist of low-caloric snacks, so these include fruits, vegetables, nuts, or even low-fat yogurt with berries. Dinner time, it can be a fairly substantial meal. It's recommended you start eating around 7 p.m. so that you complete eating by 8 p.m. and can get the full 16 hours of fasting. Dinner should consist of some healthy grains, proteins, and fiber-rich foods. So an example would be roasted vegetables with quinoa. We also have a sample recipe here for you today as part of this workshop. So we've included a recipe and instructions as well as a video on how to make vegan chili. Hi, I'm going to be showing you a recipe for vegan chili. It's a great recipe to meal prep. You can really switch up the vegetables that you're adding into it or the protein sources that you're adding into it. And another plus side is that it's low in calories. Hi, I'm going to be showing you So you want to start by gathering all of your ingredients. So the ingredients I'm going to use for this chili recipe today are butternut squash, some zucchini and carrots, some beans, a bean medley for the proteins, some red and green bell pepper, some green onions as well as garlic, and then a spice blend. This just consists of cinnamon, some salt, some cloves, a little bit of oregano, and some chili powder and cumin powder as well. So you want to start by gathering all of your ingredients. So the ingredients I'm going to use for this. So I'm going to be making this recipe in an Instant Pot, but you can totally just make it in a regular pot over the stove. You're going to want to add 1 to 2 tablespoons of olive oil, and then once your pan or your pot is hot, we're going to be adding the green onions and the garlic and sauteing those for a few minutes. So I've added the green onions and the garlic, and you're just going to saute them until they're soft, and then you can add the bell peppers into the mix as well. So I've sauteed the onions and the garlic for about a minute. I'm going to now add in the red and the green bell peppers and give that a good stir for about a minute. So I cooked the red and green bell peppers for about a minute. Then I added the zucchini and the carrot, cooked that for about 3 to 4 minutes. And then I've added in the butternut squash. You're going to want to give this a good stir for about 2 to 3 minutes, and then we can add some seasoning. So the butternut squash has been on for about 3 to 4 minutes. So I'm going to be adding some of the spice mix. So just add about 3 spoons down and give it a good mix. So now that that's been mixed through, I'm going to be adding the liquid to this mixture. So this over here is about 2 cups of mixed tomato puree and water. So I did about 1 cup of tomato puree and 1 cup of water. You can also use vegetable stock if you would like. However, the pre-made vegetable stocks tend to be quite high in sodium. So if you could avoid that, that's always best. So we're going to just add the liquid. Gotta mix. Okay, so I've added the liquid and the vegetables have been sitting in the liquid for about 1 to 2 minutes. Here I have the canned bean medley that I emptied out. I gave it a good rinse. If you're using canned beans, very important to give it a nice good rinse to get all of that kind of gummy liquid off of them. And then I'm just going to be adding that to this mixture. And now I'm going to be adding a little more liquid. So I have another about 1.5 cups of just mixed tomato puree with water. And I'm going to add a little bit more. You don't quite need this exact amount. Kind of depends on how much liquid you want and how big your container is. So I'm just going to be adding about 1/2 cup. So I've added about 1/2 to 3/4 cup. I'm going to add a little more seasoning. About 2 teaspoons. Now that everything's mixed, we're going to get to the stewing, simmering, reducing stage. So if you're making it in an Instant Pot and you're using canned beans, you're going to pressure cook it at high for 2 minutes. If you're using fresh beans, those are going to take, or fresh lentils, those are going to take a lot longer to cook. So there is a beef stew or bean chili mode. You can use one of those or just pressure cook it for about 5 to 6 minutes at high pressure. If you're doing it over the stove, you're going to want to leave it on a medium-low heat for about 30 minutes. Just make sure you keep an eye on it. The thing that's going to take the longest to cook is going to be the butternut squash. So you'll know when it's done, kind of when the butternut squash is soft, and you can poke a fork through it. So since I'm using an Instant Pot, I'm going to put it on high pressure for 2 minutes. Make sure that if you're pressure cooking, it's set to the sealing stage and not the venting stage. Okay, so it's set to cook. So 2 minutes at high pressure, that means the entire process is probably going to take about 20 to 25 minutes. So if you're doing it in a pressure cooker, you can just sort of leave for another 20 to 25 minutes, wait until it signals that it's done. Or if you're cooking it on the stove, make sure you keep an eye on it as it simmers. So while this is cooking, I just wanted to go over a few options for different substitutions or different modifications you can make. So vegetable-wise, when you're composing a dish like this that's intended for intermittent fasting, you want to include one starchy vegetable, so a pumpkin, a squash of different kinds, or even sweet potato. So you could kind of substitute with different types of squash or different types of sweet potato. Just make sure you balance it out with a lot of high fiber vegetables as well. If you're going to be using sweet potato, a way to cook it quickly would just be to microwave it for about 3 minutes, and that'll cook it quickly, and you can actually cut down on the pressure cooking time. It'll take only 1 minute instead of two. Another thing you could do if you're looking for more flavor and you're okay to take a little more time in the cooking process is roasting the squash or the pumpkin or the sweet potato separately. So that would be about a tablespoon of olive oil with the spice mix, roast it in the oven, and then you can add it to the chili either once you're done pressure cooking it or before you pressure cook it. It's kind of a matter of preference as to how much you want those vegetables cooked. So that's definitely another option you can do. As for vegetable variations within this dish, you can add corn, you can add celery. Protein wise, I've added just a mixture of beans, but you could choose your favorite kind. So black beans or black eyed peas or red kidney beans. Another option is taking tofu and crumbling it up so it kind of has the texture of ground beef, cooking that and adding that to the mixture as well. That's another really great source of protein. So it took about 30 minutes to cook, but it's finally ready. So you can serve it right away, or if you want to store it and meal prep it, it lasts for about 3 to 4 days.
Intermittent fasting was Google's hottest trending dietary search in 2019, and it was the most practiced weight loss intervention among female physicians within the same year. So let's explore what real people who have tried this diet have to say about their experiences. All of the following success stories are gathered from dietdoctor.com, which is an online website run by doctors, dietitians, and other experts who are empowering people to dramatically improve their health. Dr. Jason Fung shares that if weight is one of your big issues, then low-carb diets and fasting may be a significant help to you. I have no proof other than anecdotes, but many people have found that fasting helps their loose skin. Dr. Esther Carrera shares her own experience with intermittent fasting and says that fasting was the key to resetting my insulin levels to normal. My weight came down another 17 pounds and is now stable for some months at 148 pounds, maintained by daily intermittent fasting. People that haven't seen me for a few years aren't sure that it's me. And finally, Barb, a retired RN, shares that I was taking 170 units of Lantus a day and a handful of metformin along with meds for coronary artery disease and a host of other illnesses. I was diabetic for 26 years. This poor old body has Crohn's disease, Barrett's esophagus, hypertension, hypothyroidism, and more. Diabetes after 26 years of insulin dependence is gone. The neuropathy in my feet vastly improved. Crohn's disease, after 45 years of agony, is in complete remission. Cardiac issues are resolving themselves. Blood pressure is back to a healthy normal, and esophageal issues are hugely improved. As you can see, intermittent fasting can be very effective if it's the right fit for you.